Welcome back to the Kingsway Podcast. So glad you are here. Coming at you with another reaction and review of a chosen episode. Chosen Season 1, Episode 5.
If you have been watching these and don't remember which one Episode 5 is, we'll tell you for the first time. I only thought of this because we started the episode and Trevor's seen the whole series.
Yep.
And he said, I always forget what all the episodes are.
Yep.
So this is for you, person who's watched the whole thing and isn't going back and watching them again.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is the wedding at Cana.
Yep. And it's spoilers alerts. If you're not watching them yet, just know we are going to talk about details. So
yeah,
highly encourage you to watch it first before you watch these. So this is the wedding at Cana, Jesus' first miracle. Technically,
first public miracle is the way they push it, and I think that's generally biblically true.
That's similar. It seems very similar to the episode.
That's John 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in all of the Harmony of the Gospel kind of books, which is where somebody basically takes all four gospel accounts, the one according to Matthew, according to Mark, according to Luke, according to John, and they try to mush it all together to be one chronologically ordered gospel account.
Yeah.
In a lot of those, the wedding at Cana is Jesus' first miracle.
And it does seem to be kind of the launch of kind of his public ministry. For the most part, they see it as kind of the start of that quote unquote 3 years, to the cross. Well, I will say, if you haven't started on this journey and you're just like, man, they keep doing this. The reason why we are doing these reviews and the reactions is because they are so fruitful. I feel like if you're taking the time to just watch an episode even once a week, and then, I think it's something that I know Ryan's kind of being held back because he's not watching them before. And so, he's watching them and we're making these. I feel bad. I, binged the whole season. I just watched it through in, 2 days. And I absolutely loved it. And so, going back through at a slower pace, I'm still enjoying it. But I know it's part of me. I'm I know most of you are going to be that way where you're just going to go, I'm not waiting for them to put out another review.
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
That is okay. That's part of the reason why we're doing this is because these discussions, I think, help us see some of the things, reveal, and then talk about why this seems to be so powerful. Because this episode particularly, it starts to ramp up the intensity of where you find yourself in the story. I feel like I start to really find myself in kind of what's being told and the discussions and kind of the fears and questions and doubts, and even the way that Peter's trying to get Jesus to start his ministry. He's like, let's do it, over and over and over.
He's trying to push him. He literally said, or something like this, that I bet a bunch of powerful, wealthy Jewish people are going to be there, and there won't be many Romans. Mm-hmm. Let's start getting some people together.
Yep.
But only midway through the episode does he find out that him and his brother are fishermen, James and John are fishermen, and Thaddeus is there with him, and he's a stonemason.
Making latrines.
Yeah. And it's none of them were proper Jewish rabbinical students.
Yep.
Like all the other rabbis had.
Well, and Mary Mary Magdalene had a couple really great sweet
Oh,
lines
yeah.
in there that I was just she's like, I've done things that would make your blood run into ice, and Peter misses it, and then all of a sudden 2 seconds later he's like, wait, to ice? He's like, what? And she's like, yeah, I can't tell you. But I love so much about this episode. I love the way that it starts with kind of I would say the reconnection or kind of the repair of Peter's or Simon's relationship with his wife, and him just being honest with her, and her kind of, I would say in some ways, kind of helping him see that this is who he was all along.
This is what it reminded me of is in church ministry in the Midwest. There's always those people. So you always hear the statistic that a certain percentage of high school students will leave the church in college, and people don't normally share the statistic that a lot of them come back around 30 or so.
Yep.
And the way that Peter and his wife are at this moment reminds me of a lot of those stories of people who are around 30, they grew up in the church, they had left, and maybe the wife is closer to church, a little more spiritual. And then the husband starts turning around, and she's proud of him. I've seen that 100 times.
Yeah.
But it was cool that happened with Peter and his wife, because you've been seeing up to this point that's why aren't you the same God-loving man I met. And so as soon as he turns around, he's like, I hope you don't think I'm derailing our life together. And she's like, no, this is what I've always wanted.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen that before.
I definitely had a power to, from the previous episode, you're kind of wondering how Peter is going to kind of react to this. Is he's just going to let this be kind of his new battle, his new journey? He has a humility. He has an approach that seems to be more of a healthy place for him. Now, he still immediately gets on the road with Jesus, and that's the next discussion, right? Like, they're like, all right, so we're going to meet a bunch of influential people. We're going to get this thing going.
Scheming is his second nature.
Yes, he's like totally like, all right, I'm ready. One of my favorite parts, and I gotta, it's almost an hour long episode, so it's going to be
54 minutes.
I think it's definitely one of the longest yet. It definitely has a lot of new characters that are introduced. We're hanging out with Mary. We've got this story of Jesus as a child at the beginning of this episode.
I loved.
Oh, it was so cool where he stays.
That part alone was like 2 minutes, and I was like,
dude, it's so good, right?
Yeah.
Like, and there's so many cool parts. But then you meet Thomas and his assistant. You're meeting this kind of not, and I wouldn't say they're not like unknown, but they're pretty like low characters in the sense of popularity and understanding for Canaan's wedding. Yeah. Because we're kind of like, we call it the Canaan. We don't even know who's getting married and what, But obviously Mary has a relationship with the mother-in-law or the mother of the bride or the groom. And so there's just all these characters that we've heard in the Bible, seen in the Bible, just clash at this wedding for the first time. And then Jesus shows up with a few of his followers, and wine is at the center of this. I mean, wine is at the center of the whole thing. I find it curious that, we are in the Midwest. Alcohol can sometimes be a little bit more like, divisive.
Yeah. Not hot button. I don't feel like people are debating alcohol online or anything.
No.
Not in that way, but it's touchy.
It's touchy. Yeah, exactly. And so it is crazy because I know this is going to be primarily to a conservative audience. And so how do you kind of skirt that? Because it's flat out everywhere in this episode that they're drinking. And let's be honest, like wine did not have the same level of alcohol at that time. It was actually safer to drink wine than water a lot of times because wine went through a certain purification process that would keep it from becoming stale. So it wasn't necessarily treated always as kind of this escape or drug or high level party thing that it is now. I want to be clear about that. However,
and I want to back that up. You can see it in the fact that they're drinking the good stuff for a whole day, and none of them are like
falling over,
out.
pass out. Yes.
Yeah. Now there were drunkards in that day. It was a thing you could do, but it was harder to do.
Yes, and it was a lot more expensive. And so that's the other side of it is like these are super rare occasions. Yeah. Weddings would last 2-3 days. They could, they would be incredible celebrations, but they would be like lifelong dowries for those events, would be a part of this. So it's not something that was commonplace by any means, but it's definitely a part of an intentional choice. This wasn't like Jesus all of a sudden was like, I guess it'll be wine.
I hate drinking and I'll never do it, but here's some wine.
And I want to be clear because I think in my own study and listening to guys that I really do trust, wine was an intentional choice because wine symbolizes joy in the kingdom. And so it has this incredible connection to joy in the symbolic way. And I love that because you see it when people are drinking and they're having fun. It's like this joy is a part of this entire episode. Like everyone's happy. Yeah. And when they get that best
all
wine,
the conflicts happen when people are like not happy. Yeah. Because that's part of the wedding. It's like we're entertaining you. And most people can be their own entertainment with a little bit of wine.
With a little bit of wine, exactly. Well, and they do show Jesus drinking. They do show his disciples drinking. They show Jesus dancing. They show Jesus joking with his disciples.
This is the most anti-Baptist episode of the show. I'm so sorry to all our Baptists.
And legitimately though, like it was one of those episodes I remember watching and going, this is all culturally true. This is all historically true.
Even down to the fact that they had the good stuff. They were going to go to the worst stuff. And Jesus made more of the good stuff.
Yep.
He wasn't like, I'm afraid about them, like for them getting drunk, so I'll make some like watered down stuff that's like palatable. No, he made
the best,
the good stuff, which means the delicious stuff and the not weak.
the
stuff.
strong stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, all right, so give it to me here. Think about this for a second. What was your favorite instance in this section?
Man.
I know that's like hard to do, but go to the wedding, because I think honestly that opening scene with Jesus in the temple and being left for 3 days and Mary coming back to find him with Joseph was awesome.
Yeah.
But
we also haven't even mentioned Nicodemus yet.
No.
Which I love that whole section too.
So go with me to
okay.
the wedding. What's the wedding? Like, what's the scene that caught you the most?
That's really hard. I feel like it would be all the stuff, all the scenes around Thomas and not having enough wine and his face. Like his attitude change from worrying to because there's not enough wine to him standing next to Jesus and all the water stuff and Jesus trying to sell him on just trust me. And him like despairingly joking.
Yeah.
Like
he's like, you're an idiot. There's
what
no
would that
solution
even do? And all these like, what does this have to do with anything kind of moments? To him, just like turning into a painting because he's so still and eyes wide open at the end. That whole sequence was super good,
dude. That definitely moved me, and it still had power.
Yeah.
But the scene with Mary when she asks him to make the wine is still it's still the scene that grabs me every time. They run out of wine, and because in John they record it this way, but she comes and she goes, Jesus, they're out of wine, and Jesus says the line from John. He's like, it's not my time yet, and you're like wondering how are they going to do this because in the text, I know this because I just studied it. In the text, there's no like persuasive argument. She just turns to the servants and she's like, do whatever he tells you. Like she's just like, you know what I mean? There's no but in this, they use this incredible cool way of just talking about how a mother figure like Mary to Jesus has persuasive, brilliant power. And it's not a arrogant, overbearing power. It's a humble approach. She asks on behalf of someone else for their benefit, gently and kindly, that he would do something. And it's like he like looks down at her and it's like his face and her face, it's like he's 12 years old again.
Almost can't see it past his beard and his mustache and all that, but just like he's like, it's not my time yet, and she's like, please. And he just starts cracking a grin like, I can't say no. You're right, in the most loving way possible. It's almost like I'll do this one for you, even though it's literally the start, especially the way they painted it, also in Scripture, literally the start to his public 3-year ministry.
And the purification jars and all of that have such powerful symbolism to what he's about to do. You have, I think it's Thaddeus in the background talking about when you make the first cut in this, into stone, how you can't go back. And it's like, and Jesus is realizing this.
When you do the first cut, it's setting in motion a series of choices you can't undo. And it's doing that audio over the video, the visual of Jesus, like praying before these jars, about to make his first miracle, which like is so cool anyway. But then you remember like passages about him being the cornerstone, passages about him being like the chief building block in a new temple, in a new.
Well, and then you go like you can't put old wine into old wine or new wine into old wineskins. You have to put it into new wineskins. And there's a part of me that he's going to use that illustration of just talking about this is the new kingdom, is this new joy, this new wine. And so all of that is like coming together. It's like his kingdom has fallen. It's here. It's new. It's fallen to the earth in this wine. It's now here type thing.
Let me scratch that. I think my favorite part of the episode wasn't Thomas, although that was great, and it wasn't Jesus and Mary. It was Thaddeus talking about how he met Jesus, and revealing that Jesus makes a new metaphor based on everybody's specialty.
Yep.
So with Peter, we already know, like, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. But Thaddeus, stonemason, follow me and we'll build a new kingdom.
Yep.
As they're building latrines, like the lowest of the low, a fortress so strong that nobody can whatever.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, it just blows me away.
I love
how
it.
he changes that metaphor, because he does that in his teaching ministry and his parables.
Yep.
Changes the metaphor to fit whatever. But like how they've done it with each of the disciples.
Oh, it feels like you're watching scripture come to life. I mean, you're watching these stories, these people get skin and flesh, and like those stories feel like you're reading them like a children's book, and then you hear it like this, and you're like, no, that's someone's life.
Yeah.
Like that was their whole course of their life changed because of that. It wasn't just like a neat little thing that he said to make people kind of feel like, oh, I understand. It was like this is the plan. This is the purpose of what I'm here for.
It feels like hearing Jesus say, I'll make you a wrangler of men, and then the camera backs up and everybody's got on Wrangler jeans, and you're like, the context.
Well, and
It feels like that.
This is why I think I love this episode so much, and I know you're going to agree with this when I say it.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong, but I doubt I am. The nerdiest part of this episode is watching John the Baptist and Nicodemus talk in this dirty, dark cell.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, this is an unseen conversation, not recorded in Scripture, but Nicodemus is on a journey because of the instances we do have.
Which is the next chapter, John 3.
John 3.
John 2's wedding at Cana. John 3 is how Mark Scott would put it, Nick at night.
Nick at night, yep. I call him Nikolai. So the thought behind this scene is so incredibly well done.
Yeah.
Where Nicodemus is coming in, he's using a political excuse to get around John, and then John is angry at Nicodemus and all that he represents, and he is not nice in any way.
John the Baptist is such like a communist or something.
He
like
is.
Anti-establishment, whatever.
Dude, you're the man, and I don't like you.
Yeah,
like,
he
I mean,
seems like
you're a part of the man.
Yeah.
And Nicodemus is trying without like coming out and saying like, I'm doubting everything, I need help. But he's got just enough humility to be there, but not enough to listen at times where you're just like, are you going to listen?
Yeah, it was
like,
almost frustrating how much both of them wouldn't put their guard down to have the conversation that you know they needed to have.
Yes,
yeah.
like that was like...
And it got there, kind of, most of the way.
It felt like they got there, and then neither of them were happy where it ended.
Yeah.
Like, John the Baptist was stoked to hear that the Messiah is now here. You know, like the King is coming. I love how he spoke with like the Torah as his like answer. He's like, "Who is it?" And he's like quoting Solomon, quoting Isaiah, quoting. You know, he's like quoting all these like prophecies. Like this is who he is, and I love how it revealed Nicodemus's theology. He's like, God cannot have a son. Israel is his son.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's what I'm talking about, the nerdy stuff, where I'm just kind of like, that would be hard if you thought that's a different Trinity, a different relationship.
Well, it's tough because every time Israel adds a new head, Abraham, Moses, David, it's harder to add the next person. And they're hundreds of years removed from David.
Yes.
So
I think it's like 345 or something.
It seems almost impossible. It seems like adding a new national holiday. You're like, is that even legal? Can we do that?
Yeah.
And but for them, it's like we have these heads of Israel. They are like the representative head of Israel. It seems difficult to say. He's thinking like God has a son, and he does.
Mm-hmm.
But when he says no, Israel is God's son. That's another way to understand Jesus, especially in the beginning of Matthew. Jesus is the new Israel. So you look at Matthew, and there's the genealogy in chapter 1, and then some birth narrative stuff that looks a lot like Israel. Escaped to Egypt to flee persecution, got out of Egypt, and Jesus got baptized in the Jordan. Israel went through the Red Sea. Jesus was wandering in the wilderness and to fend off Satan's temptation. Israel was wandering in the wilderness. The Sermon on the Mount,
40
the Ten
days,
Commandments.
40 years, all that stuff. Mm-hmm.
It's so seeing that in what Nicodemus said. No, God only has one son, and it's Israel. Well, yeah, also that. Like that's also true, and that's also Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's powerful. And
Yeah.
I think what's so cool is at the end, Nicodemus, I think, was looking for a different answer, and he didn't like the answer that he got. And then John the Baptist is stoked because it was like Nicodemus brought this knowledge of a miracle that he knew was impossible unless it was this king. And it leaves you in such a place where I feel like that was the part of the episode that's setting up the tension that is starting to build with, where the story's going with Nicodemus in chapter 3. And I am so excited to watch again the scene with Jesus and Nicodemus that we have in Scripture in John 3. Yeah. It is going to happen in this season, and it is awesome. And so I'm stoked. It's like they're slowly building it, and they're doing. So the ending of the episode.
All right,
go ahead. You have anything?
I loved how believable all the wedding stuff was.
Yep.
I've never been to a Jewish wedding. I have been to my own wedding and helped prepare for that, and helped prepare for my best man. I was his best man. We traded best men. So I was in his wedding and helped prepare a little bit, and some other weddings. All the preparation stuff and
stressful,
man. The attitude collisions. Oh my gosh, it's so familiar.
It feels like you find. Like I said,
super crooked. It's all we could afford.
You find yourself in this episode. You really do. Favorite scene that had nothing to do with theology, just has everything with Jesus' humanity that we've talked about time and time again. At the very end, Peter has betrayed his brother and revealed that he's a terrible dancer. Yeah. Talks about him being a donkey that can't walk straight, and like he has 4 left feet. Yeah. And Jesus at the very end, where Peter's just like, I will go with you to the ends of the earth. And Jesus like, I hope you will. Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, but first, we need to talk about Andrew. And he makes this great like left turn where he's like, I need to see it. And he's like, don't make me do it. And he's like, oh, come on, let's show me it. And it was just, it felt like walking with Jesus wasn't just sitting alone quietly praying and like being amazed by miracles. It felt like
it wasn't study hall
humanity. It felt like life. And
the fact that Peter was like, can you fix that? And Jesus was like, there's things I can't do. I just love the way that he has that light tenderness. And of course he's hanging out with kids again in the middle of it. And like there's just a part that seems to be, he pulls into those light-hearted, cool, fun moments just as much as he pulls into the serious moments. Like he seems to have this balance that I think is just a beautiful picture that life is meant to be lived. It's the way Jesus is portrayed here, I think, is the way Jesus actually is, or at least close to it. Because when you see Jesus here, you're not afraid to go to heaven. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are afraid of heaven a little bit, or think it's not as good as it will be, because they think like, oh, I'm going to play a harp for 1,000 years or whatever. I don't know how to play the harp. That sounds boring after a while. Or or when they picture heaven, I'm going to get a mansion and the sports car, and Jesus isn't in their picture.
He's nowhere around him.
Seeing this Jesus makes you want to be in heaven with him.
Yep.
Like be in eternity. It makes you want to live in the Garden of Eden.
And Mary says that. She's like, well, we're going to follow and watch. That's what Peter's saying. Yeah. And she's like, we'll probably do it forever. Like that's probably what we'll do. We'll just watch what he does, and we'll be in awe forever. And in my mind, I'm going, he's a person that you everybody wants to be around, man. Like there's nothing apart. I love how his mom calls him kind of ugly. Like there's that one line where she's like, I bet he's handsome. And she's like, I'm just like, oh my gosh. Made me laugh.
Yeah.
Well, man, this is a great episode. It was so fun to kind of sit down with you. I know there's way more we could talk about. This episode has some powerful moments that I think I see myself in the doubts of Thomas. I see myself in the frustrations of Nicodemus. Yeah. I see myself in the like wanting to take on the world like Peter sometimes, but not knowing, what that really means.
I see myself in Andrew.
Yeah,
I don't know about that, Jesus. I don't know about that.
And I just love, because at the end of the episode, I feel like everybody's learning and like growing and moving forward,
and there's room for all of them.
There's room, and it feels right. So, hey, continue to check out these. We'll be bringing these out every Tuesday. So next week will be number 6. So if you got a week now to watch number 6 and then come back and watch this, we have a Q&A that we're trying to do.
Yes, I was about to say that.
So we need to make sure that if you check in the description, you can email us any questions. This can be personal, theological. It can be, any question that you feel like you'd like to hear us discuss and talk. We would love to try to do that
and
for you.
And if you just want to get to know us better.
Yeah, anything too. You might want to know where we came from, where we lived, where we grew up.
Yeah,
a little bit maybe more about our family. So we'd love to chat and bring that up.
So you can do that either in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or email me at ryan@kingswaymo.com. All that'll be in the description.
And if you like what you saw today, it always helps if you click the like button or subscribe or share it with a friend. So, hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as we did, and we'll see you next week. Have a great and glorious day in the Lord.
See ya.